In this episode of The Heart of Teaching Music, we welcome Dr. Dré Graham and Adolphus Hailstork.
If you had asked me this time, even last year, if I would ever get to actually speak and be in the same virtual room as Adolphus Hailstork, I would have told you were crazy.
I started composing in high school, and then my high school orchestra director, also a woman, said, I've heard that you're sitting composing, Hailstork, if you write it, we'll play it.
Hi, I'm Julia Baumanis.
And I'm Scott Edgar. Welcome to the Heart of Teaching Music.
Because without people, there is no music. This space is dedicated to the stories behind the sound.
Stories of identity, belonging, and the courage to make a difference through music.
Join us as we welcome leaders in music and music education who share their journeys, their challenges,
and what it truly means to teach, connect, and lead in our profession. Together, we'll explore why music matters and discover the true power of music for all. Welcome to the third episode of The Heart of Teaching Music. We would like to thank our episode sponsor, GIA Publications. I cannot wait to introduce you to our two guests for today. One of them is a dear friend. Dr. Dré, the true Dr. Dré with 3 doctorates, is here to talk to us about the power of music in his life, the heart of music in his life, and what he has brought to so many in Florida, culminating with Dr. Dré, the teacher of the year in the entire state of Florida, not the music teacher of the year, the teacher of the year. And how I got to know Dr. Dré is based on a book that he created called The African American Composers in the Wind Band Tradition, a book that I worked with him a little bit at GIA Publications, and just pure genius. And when Dré and I were in conversation of who do we want to write the foreword for this book, there was one person that came up, one person front and center. And Dré said, I want Adolphus Hailstork. And I was like, I don't know. That's a pretty big ask. And not only did we get Adolphus Hailstork to write the foreword for this, Adolphus Hailstork is joining us here today. Dr. Dré, Adolphus Hailstork, thank you for joining the Heart of Teaching Music. Welcome.
Sure, absolutely.
So we are starting every single episode the same way. And maybe we can start off with you, Adolphus, very much getting at the heart of why we got into the field and why we've created a career and dedicated our lives to something that is a lot. The profession is a lot, and it will take everything from us if we choose to give it to us. But Adolphus, what does the heart of music mean to you?
Well, if you're asking me how I got started on it, I'm going to tell you, I was in my 40s before I realized that some people chose their careers. I've always been involved in music, and it's been a lifelong, just my entire way of life. It was a calling, not a choice. It's just, there was no alternative. That was it. So that's what it has been for me. I started out singing, learning how to play the violin, learning how to play the piano, learning how to play the organ. And then I started composing in high school, and I never stopped, and I haven't started decomposing yet.
Adolphus, just a quick follow-up on there, because this audience is largely going to be band folks, and I think we've all come to know and respect one of your seminal works for us, and that's your American Guernica. Can you tell us a little bit about that piece, where that came from? And as soon as Adolphus chimes in here, Dré, I want to ask you, what does that piece mean to you? Because my goodness, the folks here, that's part of our core repertoire and has meant so much to so many.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was invited to enter the CBDNA contest, and I was thinking of an idea, and I wanted to see if I could combine some kind of gospelized flavoring with an avant-garde sound of clusters and all of that. And the idea of a church setting came to mind, and an explosion of sound came to mind. And where that happened when 4 little girls got killed. And I was very touched by that, as I am very often by the abuse of children. And of course, that's more than an abuse, that's a slaughter. And that slaughter prompted me to think of the famous Picasso painting, Guernica, in which a town of Guernica got bound by, let's see, I guess it was the Nazis, I don't know, who decided that the town needed to be obliterated. Obliteration, I think, is the theme. And so I was going to juxtapose those two things in the piece, and I started off with the explosion because it's just a very good beginning. But then in came the gospel piano, and the explosion resumed just to set up these two entities, you might say. So that's how the piece came to be, and it won the contest, by the way. And band directors, Robert Reynolds took it on the road for 10 years when he guest conducted wherever he was. And it's become something that band directors even have thanked me for writing. And it's been I don't know the term you use, but it's been a pivotal piece, a milestone piece in my own career anyway. And apparently, band directors have told me there's nothing else like it in the literature.
Adolphus, let me just echo and thank you for offering a quick remembrance for H. Robert Reynolds, who just recently passed away. In just a moment to celebrate what he did with your piece. Thank you so much for the context of that. Absolutely powerful, and it has impacted so many musicians and so many directors. And I know one of them is in the room with us. So, Dr. Dré, welcome. So glad you're here, my friend. If you can share just a little bit about what the heart of teaching music means to you, and maybe your feeling about being in this room with a living legend.
If you had asked me this time, even last year, if I would ever get to actually speak and be in the same virtual room as Adolphus Hailstork, I would have told you were crazy. So just first and foremost, Dr. Hailstork, thank you so much for being here and just for the opportunity that we've had to communicate, just formally to express that gratitude and appreciation. I know we've gone back and forth and communicated just with regard to the book, but just thank you again.
Thank you.
And I think I'll jump in before I get to the heart of the music. I'm going to answer the questions in reverse, just the connectivity with just the recency of what Adolphus shared. That piece has multiple meanings for me. And I think just to first start off with the fact that it was my first exposure to representation in the concert band repertoire. Up until I had an opportunity to really dig in and to perform that piece as a student, I had only been playing the music by the quote unquote dead white guys and the ones who were still alive. But it was never, I never had a chance to see myself in the music. And I mean, I'm a saxophonist. So you got jazz band, you're sitting here playing different pieces that have different elements. So you talk about those different jazz harmonies and extended techniques that are used in other pieces of music and all the different types of rhythms that have that influence, but still having that African-American composer was something that was absent from my school repertoire as growing up as a musician. And so when we got the opportunity to play American Guernica and learning that, I'm like, okay, Adolphus Hailstork, that doesn't sound like a typical name that what we've played. And so going in and looking that up, right? It's like, it's just Gustav and Percy and Claire. These are the names that you're playing all the time. And so it's like, you look it up and you're like, whoa, wait a second. This is different. And then obviously digging into the piece and hearing those ties to classical music and things that are more representative to that culture that I grew up in, it ignited a curiosity, if you will. And that same curiosity is what served as the catalyst for the book that you referenced, Scott, earlier. But then also that was one of the things that pushed me and propelled me through that connectivity with music. And so just what does the teaching music and the heart of music mean to me? Just like Adolphus, it's been a part of my life ever since I was a kid. My dad actually traveled around singing in a gospel quartet and would drag little Dré with him to the rehearsals. And I was standing in the front of the youth choir at my church, Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church, singing solos and delving in that way. And it was my dad who got me involved in band music. He's like, hey, you need to be in band. And so I joined and started playing clarinet. He's like, no, you need to play saxophone. I want you to play saxophone. So I said, okay, Dad, I'll play saxophone. I was just excited. I didn't know any difference and just kind of took off with it. And it was during that time of cultivating that skill that I had the opportunity to learn from my high school director, Sherry Sleeper, who, when you talk about, and I'm really glad Julia's on here, because I mean, we talk about how much emphasis and highlighting and spotlighting we've been giving to not only women composers, but women directors. I mean, the most influential band director in my life was a female director who I can't imagine not having Sherry Sleeper as my quote unquote second mother, but also the most influential person in my musical career. And so she ignited this passion. I actually, contrary to Adolphus's journey, I was somewhat trying to deny that like tie specifically to music. And when I got to college, I was a double major in microbiology and music education. Because in my head, I was going to be an anesthesiologist for 11 years. That way, the first year would take care of 10 years of malpractice insurance, do that for 10 years after that, and then retire and become a high school band director. So the music was still there, but had a really pivotal moment while I was in college that was like, no, this is what you need to be doing. And made that shift, finished my master's. I did them back to back. And that same director who I told you was so influential to me gives me a call. It's like, hey, what are you doing next year? I'm like, well, I'm looking for a band director job. And she says, well, how would you like to come and take over for me? I'm leaving to open up a new school and I would like you to come over and continue the legacy. So it's more than just her role as my teacher and mentor, but has become an incredible colleague and friend, and still to this day continue. I'm actually, whenever we're finished today, I'm going to work with her to clinic some orchestras here in Tampa. So getting still that chance to continue growing with her.
Oh, that's amazing.
But I mean, music itself is just that uniquely human opportunity that we have to connect on such an incredible level. And so it has been such an important part of my life. So I really think that's a really great question to start off with, because I think it looks different for everyone. But then at the end of the day, it means so much to all of us that we get to share it. And that's what brings us together.
Yeah. What's interesting is the answer is different for everybody, and it will be, but there's a couple commonalities here. And I want to open up with what, Adolphus, you said you were 40 when you realized people actually chose their careers. We're talking about a calling, right? And whether we had different plans for ourselves or not, the calling was the thing that both of you answered and are fully invested. And because of the work that both of you do, it is now opening up that calling in those venues of opportunity through representation, especially with the book, for other people who had never seen themselves in this space. Mm-hmm. So they might think, is that space for me because nobody like me is here? And so you're answering the calling, whether or not you thought that was going to be your first call to pick up. And I too just want to thank you for it. And Dré, big shout out to your band mother, because, there are people in our lives and in this profession that are pivotal, and they just show up, whether we knew that they were going to be there or not.
Yeah.
And she's that for you.
Absolutely.
I had a similar experience in high school. By the time I got to high school, I had sung solos, believe it or not, in junior high, conducted in junior high, played the violin, played the piano, started organ. And one thing I hadn't done is composed. And I started composing in high school. And then my high school orchestra director, also a woman, said, I've heard that you're sitting composing. Hailstork, if you write it, we'll play it. Mm. And that was it. My junior year, I wound up writing a string orchestra piece and conducting it. And then eventually the next year, senior's year, I wrote a full orchestra piece and conducted that. And that was really what started. I never looked back. And that's all I wanted to do was write music.
Wow.
Adolphus, what a powerful story of them trusting a junior high kid to write a piece, to conduct.
Well, I was a sophomore then. I mean, I'd moved on. I don't know what she must have said that the end of my sophomore year or the beginning of my junior year. She said, "Hailstork, if you write it, we'll play it," and that's it. And I never looked back. To me, that was the most important educational moment I ever experienced.
Mm. Wow.
What was so influential about that? Why was that so impactful for you?
Because that meant I could write a piece, hear it, conduct it, came to the conclusion that's what I really love to do, and I've been doing it ever since. I'm sitting here at my composing desk right now, and I'm going to work on a concerto for French horn and orchestra. I've never stopped. And I figured that about 20 or 30 years ago, I started getting kind of good. I feel, it worked. I'm really doing this kind of well. I'm getting played.
Yeah.
And dreams came true. I mean, as a kid, I dreamt of having a piece played in Carnegie Hall by a relatively well-known orchestra, kind of called the New York Philharmonic. And that actually happened
Yeah.
6 or 7 years ago. I was
Wow.
in Carnegie Hall hearing the New York Philharmonic play a piece of mine. So a lot of my dreams have come true. And I think with that start, that push, that opening up of her ensemble to this kid who said he wanted to write music, that was it. And I just finished a piece. The program note starts off by honoring her. And her name was Gertrude Howarth. I surmised that she dreamt that someday she wanted to be an orchestra conductor. And of course, at the time, we're talking about late 40s, early 50s, that the opportunities for a woman conductor were nil. And she wound up teaching in a very fine high school. And there I was. It's serendipity all over the place.
And just to end cap that, what a beautiful, she must have been experiencing her dreams sort of seeming fleeting because of the times, the 40s.
Exactly.
But to channel that energy into the dreams of others who may not have realized that that was their dream yet, and allowing for students to have, agency in the music making process. I give you the group, but now it's your canvas. Go ahead and paint.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. Wow. All right, Gertrude. Very cool.
Gertrude Howarth.
Way to go. You got this train running.
She did. And it never stopped. I mean, 60 years later, I'm still at it. Yeah.
Let's take a quick break.
This episode is sponsored by GIA Publications. GIA is a leading publisher of music education resources. From music play for infants to beginning band and strings methods, college-level texts to music aptitude tests, books from leading voices in music education to top-notch recordings, GIA has something for you. Visit GIAmusic.com to learn more. GIAmusic.com.
Hey, HOTM family. Do you have a comment, a general question, or even a question for a specific future guest? Great, because you could be a part of a future episode. Visit musicforall.org/podcasts for a list of future guests. Then all you have to do is click the Ask a Question button. We may include your voice on a future episode. Again, to record your question, just go to musicforall.org/podcasts and click the Ask a Question button. Let's rejoin our conversation.
One of the things that we're going to talk about on this series is what is the true meaning of Music for All? And we've already talked about it a few times about Music for All and where are places that we had to break through some barriers. Dré, I know that was at your heart when we've been referring to this book, but just let me be one of the first to say what an amazing, amazing resource that you created, my friend, and a gift to the entire profession.
Thank you.
Maybe speak just a little bit for us about what Music for All really means to you.
It seems kind of on the nose, but everyone should have access to a quality music education experience. But even outside of the education piece, I mean, I would often say that my goal with my students is not to create more band directors and more professional musicians. Now, that is a catalyst and it's a part of it. And I've had a number of students actually who have come back and taught not only in the profession, but actually I got to teach with them. My primary orchestra feeder at the end of my time in the classroom was a former student of mine, which was really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
And so, yeah, it was a really great opportunity to have that. And then I had other band directors in the county where I taught. So they had their grandmother there with my band director being at another school. But then I had students that I produced who were teaching in the county. So that was a really cool opportunity. But it's not just for those students, but it's for those students who then leave the program, may never touch their instrument again, but then they're out listening to a symphony, like, oh, I recognize that piece. Or they're talking to other friends, they're getting to have conversations about what they appreciate about music, or really pointing out that opportunity for someone to say, oh, like, I don't read music, or they're wearing those shirts that says world's best, and then it has DAD on the treble clef. Or like, oh, I can read that. And so it's creating those opportunities and the appreciation for music across the board, because as I said earlier, music is something that is uniquely human and it's something that ties us together. So when you think about those opportunities, those chances, when we go to the movies, when we go to shop around. And there's so many times I'm in a restaurant and I'm like, man, do you hear that? And my wife will say, what are you talking about? I'm like, the song that's been playing for the last 5 minutes. And she's like, wait, what do you mean? And then she'll stop for a second. I didn't even realize that was on. And then now all of a sudden we're all listening to the music that's in the background that is just kind of meant for us to move around. But it also, once again, means something different to different people, because that song maybe took me back somewhere where it means something to someone else, but they still have that appreciation for the music that it connects and it draws into that. So I think just on a very high level, music should be accessible to everyone. But then also when we talk about music for all, that's where the representation piece comes in. And that's why it's so important that everyone be exposed to being able to see themselves in the music. And we should have eclectic programs and things that are representative, but you can't teach what you don't know. And so we talked about the catalyst for that book. I think that a large part of it is, if we don't teach about different cultures and we don't learn about different cultures, how do I feel comfortable teaching a piece that is explicitly about a different culture, something that I haven't experienced yet? And so you think about a lot of the African-American composers who are putting in very specific characteristics of the African-American experience. Well, if I'm not from that culture and I didn't take an African-American history class as an elective or something to that effect, then I might not feel very comfortable talking about slave song. I may not feel very comfortable talking about the role and the impact of the Black church. I may not feel comfortable talking about these elements that are uniquely African-American, but yet I have some sense of being able to teach something that is written by Aaron Copland or something that's written by Gustav Holst, because that culture has been embedded into the band experience. So I'm okay with doing that because it's what we've been taught. And so this hopefully is providing another tool to say, hey, here's your doorway into this world that is not as, it's not as esoteric, first off, as you might think it is. Like, more people know more about it, and you know more than you think you do. You just have to be comfortable with taking ownership of that and just teaching it. I was actually presenting last month in California, and there was a time whenever I guess gave permission to the audience to be able to make mistakes. Like, it's okay. We're not expecting you to know everything, but it's better to make the attempt than to not do it. It's okay to be wrong and admit that you're wrong. But it's no different than if I teach the stylistic articulation of a Sousa march incorrectly. Like, you're still making that attempt to go and do it, and without the fear of being shunned because, oh no, that third strain is the way that we're playing the trio section. It's just not quite right. There's no difference in exposing students to other music, and people will let you know, hey, thanks for playing that. Maybe we should have phrased it a little bit differently and done it this way, but then that's a matter of interpretation. So every student, to circle back to the actual question, Scott, every student, every person deserves the opportunity to see themselves in a music, because we all connect to music in different ways, but it's that much more powerful. Just like having a teacher that looks like you in any content area makes the learning experience more applicable, more relevant. It's no different than having access to music that is a reflection of who you are as an individual.
Adolphus, do you have any thoughts on what music for all means to you?
Well, my experience is a little different. That I came up, wow, the generation gap is really showing here. I grew up in upstate New York, and I was totally immersed in high church Anglican religious music and also in the classics. The pop music never interested me that much. I didn't play in the band, but it's crazy, Dr. Dré, that I would go to the band rehearsals when they had them in the evening, especially after school, and just sit and listen. Although I never played a band instrument in my life, I just loved the sound of it. And that's probably, I related that to the concept of sustained sound, especially sustained loud sound, which you can get out of a pipe organ, because I was taking organ lessons. I was strongly acculturated in the dominant culture before I ever even got out of high school. So in terms of, I never went to a Black church, and I did not grow up in quote unquote Black culture, which still has to be defined for me. And I just wanted to write music, and I wanted to write classical music. Classical music was written by dead white composers, and I had no idea that there were Black composers. I remember telling my mother when I was about 13 or 14, I want to be, oh, well, you know how kids are. They're greatest black composer. I want to be a black composer. You know? So, I mean, because I remember saying, well, we're the black composers, Mom. And well, if they're not around, then I'm going to be it. That's what I want to be. Now, in terms of stylisms, because it's interesting, you know, you grow up, you look around, you say, hey, there's a lot of things going on. And especially by the time I was working on my doctorate, I was very much sensitized during the 60s to the problems of African Americans who grew up in a total different culture than I grew up in. I did not experience segregation. I did not fight for civil rights abuses. I didn't experience civil rights abuses. And the whole genre that's dominated our country since the 50s of the Black struggle was not my early youthful experience. And not that I thought I was white, but I didn't know that there was a huge difference in terms of how you could behave, where you could go, what you could do. And so, not having grown up in a segregated society, I only knew one thing: beware of the South. And to me, the word South was a terrifying word. And anybody ever told me I would wind up teaching in the heart of the Confederacy, I'd say, what? But anyway, that's where death happened. That's where people were abused. And as I got more understanding of that, well, I remember a meeting I had with fellow PhD students at Michigan State that we had, there were teach-outs, sit-outs, the whole 9 yards during the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement. The 60s were fantastic, the pivotal decade in the history of this country. And we would have meetings, the Black students, and I had never gone, except for when I was in college at Howard, meetings of Black students for what? And the thing is, how do we cope with this was really the big question. What's our role? And the conclusion out of that was, we do what we can do with what we have. Okay. Now I would go back to where I was living and say, okay, what can I do with what I have? By that time, of course, I had a master's in music composition, classical music composition, and didn't know anything about Black composers, except I knew there was a William Grant Still. I knew there was a Ulysses Kay. I never heard of Margaret Bonds or Florence Price. And that was not my thing. At that time, by the way, the whole focus was on European composers, as it always has been, it seems. And okay, what can I do? Okay, I can write music to the best of my ability to try to reflect the trials, tribulations, and the triumphs of being an African American in this country. That's when I read the history of Blacks in this United States. I mean, I never thought of it as a study. You've got to know what Blacks have done and what Blacks have suffered. And so, okay, what can I do? And well, so many of my pieces, or some of my pieces, I should say, have been reflective of just what I just said. The trials, the triumphs, the tribulations of being Black in the country, more as an observer, which might be not a bad perspective, than as a sufferer of that disgrace. And I broke my career down into the types of pieces I write. Some I aim for strong ethnic, meaning Black, input and dominance in the piece. Some I totally ignore about that. I don't care about that. I'm going to do my classical Eurocentric approach to writing. And third, I'm going to blend them, or I'm going to juxtapose them, those two styles, those two approaches to music. I would tell people I work both sides of the street. So, I mean, that's all there is to it. I mean, if we got to have this duplicity in the country between Blacks on one side and whites on the other at that time, then how do I fit in? What can I do? And I'm gratified to see, especially when I do a vanity search on YouTube sometimes, that there are Black groups doing pieces of mine. There are white groups doing pieces of mine. There are mixed groups. And that's exactly what I wanted to achieve.
Adolphus, thank you for that. One of your newer pieces is dedicated to the murder of George Floyd, A Knee on a Neck. Can you speak a little bit to that piece?
That was, it's a short requiem, you might call it, with words by my dear friend and collaborator, Dr. Herbert Martin of the University of Dayton. And he sent me a text a week after the Floyd murder. And it was obviously written out of blind white heat, just burning up with fervor. And I wrote to him, I said, Herb, I got this text. Do you want me to set this? And he said, would you please? And so I was infuriated also. And so I went right to it. And it came out with a piece called A Knee on the Neck. It's choral and orchestra piece, more of an oratorio type of thing. The Fourth Symphony, by the way, which does deserve mention along with that, Scott, is an actual symphony, which I call Survive. And it was commissioned by the Los Angeles Philharmonic. And they said that the concert was supposed to be in honor of William Grant Still, who had spent much of his life in Los Angeles. And so the word still, of course, stuck with me as a wordsmith kind of a guy I am sometimes. Still Holding On was the first movement. That's what I called that thing. It's a single movement work, Still Holding On. Then I decided to use that not only independently, but as the first movement of my Fourth Symphony. The second movement is called Sometimes with a Lighter Touch. That's the scherzo. The third movement was While Still Remembering, I think, the Emmanuel 9, the greatest deliberate murder to me since The Four Girls. The 9 people in the basement of a church, I don't know if they're in the basement or not, but they were having a prayer service, a prayer meeting, and reading the Bible. And a young man that they allowed to come in graciously killed all 9 of them. That still boggles my mind. And then finally, the last movement of this 4-movement symphony is called Still Crossing That Bridge, just so that people would have the right to vote and get beat up so they couldn't vote. So that was some of the things I've done. That's my contribution. I still have that contributory attitude of, if it can reflect the experience of these people, of my people, then maybe I can do something and say something about it. I was asked by NPR, they made a big hullabaloo out of the premiere of the piece, and what did I hope to achieve? And I said, I hope that people would walk out of the auditorium thinking that we can do better. We can be a better country. And in fact, I just stumbled across a Latin text that I'm using for the title of a piece for flute and strings called Andeminus Milius, which means with effort, we can be better. And it's so fitting of the times, so that I'm always thinking about that, the determination to do better, help make things better.
Adolphus, what a gift you just gave us and gave our profession. I think this is a great time to bring in a question that we received from a guest of ours and a dear friend of both Julia and myself, Cameron Jenkins. We reached out to Cameron and said, we're going to be sitting down with Adolphus and Dré. What question would you ask them if you had the opportunity? So he recorded this for you.
My question is, what has been a major victory in music education over the last 10 years that signals we're moving in the right direction regarding inclusion and access? Then what can we learn from that major breakthrough to help us move forward even faster?
That's, I think, a very interesting question. It would have been a better question, I think, if you'd left out the word education. What I have heard is that classical music, introduction to classical music, which I had a lot of growing up in upstate New York, was very extensively taught. And in the choir in high school, we sang the Bach St. John's Passion, the final chorale from that. And we played the European composers, et cetera, et cetera. It was a fabulous time. Never would have occurred to me that the teaching of music in the public school system would be diminished. And from what I've heard, it's been almost wiped out in some places. Now, in music in general, I'm semi-encouraged. Semi is a good word, meaning that I know how these things swing. Right after George Floyd, well, hell, right when let me start from where it got really sensitive. When they were wrestling about whether there's going to be a Martin Luther King holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And I was coming along then. I was just finishing up my doctorate and stuff like that. And I said, well, look, I know the realities. The realities is you're going to be a black guy in a white world writing classical music, and your chances of getting played are very, very slim. But you might, being an opportunist that I am, you might consider write something in honor of Martin Luther King, because if there's going to be a King holiday, there might be looking for black composers to represent the black experience in America and pay tribute to Martin Luther King, et cetera, et cetera. And so I wrote a piece called Epitaph for a Man Who Dreamed. And that has gone on to a lot of performances. So, but what happened? I did that, and then I did also a celebratory piece for the bicentennial. And okay, fine, everything's in my career looks like it's going to start rolling along here, and then there are 20 years of almost silence. In other words, the pendulum of attention always swings away and then swings back.
That's good.
And then people ask me after the George Floyd thing, well, what do you think is going to happen next? I said, well, because what happened after George Floyd is that, and then we also had COVID, that a lot of performing organizations started reflecting on their practices, what they programmed. How can is there a way to get more African-American composers involved or performers involved? Can we expand our audience and our repertoire, et cetera, et cetera? And that is a hopeful sign. That has moved in a positive direction for the time being.
Mm-hmm.
Now, being an old timer now and have seen the pendulum swing, I tell young people that, look, the pendulum may swing away now. We've had our chance, and the orchestra directors and the programmers and the administrators may now think that era has passed and onward with going back to our traditional Bach, Beethoven, Brahms, etc., and not even opening up to American composers. American composers are a fringe of the repertoire, and Black Americans are a fringe of the fringe. And, you have to face the reality of that and deal with it, but, keep writing the way you want to write. Be authentic, but stay aware. I mean, to think that this is an ivory tower art. I never bought into that. I always told people when I went around to college and stuff like that, it's a business, folks. It's a business, and you better not shirk that responsibility. If you want to go to an ivory tower philosophy of it, and you don't care if anybody hears you or plays you or anything like that, that's your right. But I always wanted to be played.
Yeah.
And so I was always aware of what I might need to do to get on stage. So I don't know if I really addressed your question, but right now it's kind of a good time. Chamber ensembles, orchestras, and operas are programming Black composers.
Mm-hmm.
And look what happened at the Metropolitan Opera. Come on. New York Philharmonic. Come on. So this is good. Now, if we just hang in there, the important thing, you know what the important thing is? The important thing is that they can't say they didn't know anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we didn't know there were any Black composers.
That's good.
We didn't know there were any Blacks who wrote operas. We didn't know any Blacks who wrote symphonies. And where have you been for the past 20 years? So
Yeah.
right now it's positive, but as I said, I'm semi-optimistic.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's great, Dré, your book has highlighted these composers and these pieces very much in the same way that pieces of the classical white canon have been highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
So, not only are we giving them the space that they have deserved for so long, we've put it in a document that's going to read very much the same way as a resource document that you'd get in, your undergraduate, graduate school of study. So it's there, and we made it easy for you to access.
Right.
So I want to thank you for not just the content, but the way that it's formatted as well.
Absolutely. But to what Adolphus was saying, I mean, it's you can't deny it. The can has been opened. There's been more attention drawn to it. And so when you look at over the last 10 years, what has happened, you've gotten more groups that are starting to come up and be developed that are highlighting these opportunities. You've got Orchestra Noir that has come out. You've got the Black Diaspora Music Project. These things that are focusing here specifically on highlighting these individuals. And I would even argue that with compositions like Guernica and with what Adolphus has done and drawing that attention all the way to whenever Omar Thomas won the Ravelli. And you start looking at these moments that are highlighted, because really without Omar winning that and it being highlighted as an African-American composer in the band world specifically, we may not have Benjamin Horn, who won it this year. And now we've started seeing these composers pop up. We've got which I just realized that there is a group of African-American band composers that has come through called the New Black Vanguard, where you've got Adrian B. Sims and you've got Marie Douglas and Kevin Day and Kataj Copley, who are coming out and uniting to make an even greater exponential impact on what they're doing. And so from what Adolphus said, you can't deny that we're here, because now it's not only is there a greater presence, there's, I believe, a greater identity and a greater ownership for that representation, to where it's maybe before I might not have been as willing to come out as that Black composer because I didn't see very many other people who looked like me. And I may not be as bold as Adolphus as a kid to say, I'm going to be the first great Black composer of this music because I don't know anyone else who's there. Now we see that. And so you know that it's possible. The ground has been laid so that I can work hard to achieve what has already been done. And maybe now I can surpass it. Whereas as a kid, we always dreamed about being the first. I want to be the first. My parents would always say, oh, you're going to be the first Black president. You're going to be the first Black this. I mean, and while that's great to be the first, we shouldn't still be being the first Black anything in 2026. And the thing is, in a lot of ways, we aren't. We just don't know that they existed before. And so it's just having those opportunities to highlight and to celebrate. And the fact that it's happening more now than ever, I think is something that's been really great. I know that in a lot of places, and Adolphus knows this more now with where he's working. I grew up in the South. I was born and raised in the South. So this has been my reality. But with the four-letter bad word of DEIA and how just that discussion and conversation has happened, I think what has been a positive catalyst of that whole battle is now we are focused on those underrepresented populations and how are they highlighted and why are we having these discussions for it being something that's negative or being considered negative by some groups, that it's being elevated this way. So it's made us really take a reflective look into how we teach, the content that we teach, the way it's developed. I mean, like I said, as a kid, I learned a lot about the contributions of our Caucasian counterparts. But whenever it came time for February, and it was only in February, I got to learn about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks every year for 13 years. And then I got to college, and unless I took an elective class, then there was no discussion about it. So I think if anything, to Cameron's question, over the last 10 years, that exposure and that increase in representation has elevated the opportunities for people to engage on a more consistent, a more tangible way, to where it's not something that is so lesser known that it's, oh, you had to make a concerted effort just to access it. And so I'm just excited that and I'm going to be optimistic like Adolphus. I'm excited that we are now in a place where, because it's becoming more talked about, we have more opportunities to just continue to elevate to where it doesn't become, we don't have to have the conversation of, oh, I need to program a piece by an African-American composer. It becomes just a part of the programmatic expectation that, oh, I'm programming this piece and this piece and this piece because it shows diversity. I'm exposing my students to it, and it's representative of so many different areas of performance.
Yeah.
Dré, Adolphus, what a huge gift. And thank you. I know Cameron's going to just be out of his mind when he hears both of your perspectives on his question. So we'll be excited to share that with him. Friends, any final thoughts before we wrap this episode? Amazing gifts that you've given us.
You guys have asked us a bunch of questions. I know this isn't me asking you a question, but I just wanted to express my gratitude for you even taking the time to put this together. These conversations are something that are so important. And we talked about the heart behind music, but it goes back to the connectivity. But it's not just about the music, it's the relationships and things that we develop along the way to be able to bring groups like this together, to give us an opportunity to learn from pillars in our community, such as Adolphus. I mean, who knows when the next time it would be, or when the first time, who would have known that it was now, that just to get to hear and learn and glean from that wisdom and just have that opportunity. So no, thank the two of you, Scott and Julia, for what you're doing, just continuing to create these connections and cultivate this space where we can have these types of conversations.
Here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I told Scott before you guys got on that I was going to try not to just lose my mind in the coolest way possible, because this has been one on our calendar that I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to talk to these people. Oh my gosh, I've played his music so much. And I have the opportunity to lead an orchestra in my current position. And I'm digging more and more into your music and your work, Adolphus. So
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. This is truly the stories behind the sounds. And we believe that that's where the heart of the music is.
Thank you.
Before we sign off, we would like to thank our episode sponsor, GIA Publications. Don't forget about the amazing new book, African American Composers in the Wind Band Tradition, written by Dré Graham with foreword by Adolphus Hailstork. Friends, what a gift. Thank you so very much. For Music for All, I'm Scott Edgar.
I'm Julia Baumanis.
And this has been The Heart of Teaching Music.